Good morning. Kind of a special day. We have a full house, standing room only. We should have sold tickets, but I'm so happy to see you all here and join us for our Board of Commissioners meeting. It's December 10th, and we're in the Cinder Hearing Room, Courthouse Square for a weekly Board of Commissioners meeting. Would you all join us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have this terrible feeling I said July 10th. If I did, because it's not. We all know that. Anyway, we have a special meeting, and the first is a continuation of a project that we let slide one year. We're very happy about it. Our student art calendar awards, and that's what I think most of you are here for, so we'll get started. Griselda Puga and Todd Irving from Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling. Would you just go ahead and lead us on, and then we'll come down and help pass out the awards with you.
Sounds good, thank you. Good morning. Yes, my name is Griselda Puga, and I'm a waste reduction coordinator for Marion County. And I would like to start by thanking the commissioners and the parents for taking the time to recognize this year's winners for the art calendar. In an effort to encourage students to think about the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, the Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling Association, which represents the 8 garbage haulers in Marion County and Marion County Public Works Environmental Services, teamed up this year to create the Student Recycle Art Calendar Contest. Beginning in April, students started submitting their illustrations that address this year's theme, which is Waste Not, Want Not. This saying helps recognize the value in our natural resources and the importance of conserving them. And we thought it was very fitting for this occasion. We're very happy that the contest has allowed students the opportunity to express their creative and artistic abilities. This year, the selection committee had a lot of fun reviewing the artwork, and the selection of the winners was based not only on the students' artistic ability, but also on the content of their message. Each of the 13 interior spot winners will receive a gift card valued at $100, and the overall winner will have or has their artwork feature on the cover of the calendar and will receive a gift card valued at $200. At this time, I would like to pass the microphone on the opportunity to Todd Irvine, General Manager of Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling Association.
Thank you, Griselda. Good morning, Commissioners. First of all, I want to echo Commissioner Brentano's comments there. We took a hiatus last year, and I want to first of all acknowledge the board here. Really appreciate the fact that we were able to dig deep and find the funding. I can tell you that we've received numerous phone calls over the last year. We have people, quite frankly, from all over. We have a couple of people that have second homes in Arizona, and one is reported to come here every year to get around this time to get their art calendar, and was very disappointed that it wasn't there last year. So they are very, very excited. So thank you so much for that. As Griselda mentioned, there was a number of wonderful pieces of artwork that we got the opportunity to review, and we're just so pleased that we're able to bring back the program, and again, want to thank you very much and all the participants, and including those that were not selected. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Todd, I'm probably interrupting you to say it somewhere else, but so where will these be available for people?
Actually, each one of the haulers, the Mid-Valley Garbage Recycling Association and Marion County Public Works, and actually I think Griselda might touch on that a little bit further.
All right, wonderful.
Yes, they can stop at our Public Works Environmental Services office. They are available for free, and they can also visit our website, mcrecycles.net.
All right, thank you.
At this point, we have a PowerPoint presentation, and we will also be, if you can help us pass out the certificates and the gift cards, that would be really appreciated.
everybody's hand and we'll just shake their hands. It starts here, Kevin. Yeah. Should the money come first?
No.
All right, excuse us.
Would you like to?
Why don't you go ahead and call him up? All right, I think we're ready.
Okay.
So we will start with our, this is January, Ariadne Rodriguez, a 12th grader from Early College High School. Can you please come to the front?
And all you get from me is a handshake. But would you stand right here?
And as the students' names are called, please step forward. The next one is Mackenzie Huskin, 6th grader, Livingston Adventist Academy.
Turn around. You want to take a picture with, get Mackenzie in the artwork here.
Aubrey Tupper, 6th grader, French Perry Middle School. Abigail Lamas, 9th grader, Early College High School. Jennifer Porras, 6th grader from Livingston Adventist Academy. Madeline Fish, 6th grader, Livingston Adventist Academy. Lauren Lauren Bolivar, 3rd grader, Lee Elementary. Alexis Reeves, 4th grader, Hammond Elementary. Priscilla Arechiga, 6th grader, French Prairie Middle School. Emma Ann Hurley, 6th grader, Judson Middle School. Oscar Rinza, 6th grader, Livingston Adventist Academy. Eric Ortiz Howe, 4th grader, McKinley Elementary. We also want to call Anne Biondello. I think that the PowerPoint, I don't know if I skipped on the PowerPoint, but this is our 13th winner. So if Anne can step forward. Is Anne here? And the overall winner that has their artwork on the front cover is Luis Perez, 11th grader from Early College High School. If all the students can come together so we can all take a group picture. And with the commissioners too as well.
Might we do 2 lines or something? Let's do 2 lines. Look at her first. All right, everybody ready?
This looks serious.
1, 2, 3. I'm gonna get one more. 1, 2, 3. Smile. All right. Thank you.
Someday one of them might be a star like that.
Great. Perfect.
All right, let's.
We want to thank all the families and the commissioners for taking the time to come and recognize the winners. Thank you.
So do the winners get calendars?
Well, we're
Yes,
gonna.
they will. They have a bag of goodies that will be
got
handed
it.
to them out there. So if, for the families, once you step out, we'll have a bag of goodies, and thank you for coming once again.
Yes, thank you all for coming, and I'm glad we could do this again. I spent a whole year not knowing where I was supposed to be, but of course, when I see that new calendar, I'll feel a lot better. You're not much for hints, Todd. All right, we'll let it settle just a minute.
So I got my first call on garbage.
Oh, did you now?
Lady wanted hers went up 90%. Somebody else is only went up 6%.
And you told her? What, you're in the
I got her
county.
address. I said I got her address. I'm going to have Jeff do some research.
Well, I know what it is. She's in the county.
City limits, probably.
I think the city went up higher than
Yeah, the city went up higher than we
Right.
did. She said she lived in the county?
I did. Well, I tell him I want.
She may not know.
She
Thank
said
you.
The renter only went up 6%. The rental. Hers went up.
All right. Well, that was fun, and I think this next one will be fun too. We have some special people that work for Marion County, and we're going to recognize them right now. And I don't quite know how this will go, but Ellen Haley, I'd ask you to come up maybe to the table, one or the other. And this is the Surveyor of the Year Award. So Ellen, would you tell us about that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We've had some good luck over a couple of years with some staff and employees. And this year it's our opportunity to recognize the Surveyor of the Year. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read what the presentation was. The 2014 Surveyor of the Year is a longtime member of OASIS, which is the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors, and possesses a wealth of information on where this organization has been, and more importantly, a clear idea of the direction we should be heading to avoid past pitfalls. His institutional knowledge of past legislation, statute rewrites, and technological advances ranging from survey equipment to platting media make him an invaluable resource to fellow county surveyors. He has always embraced technological advances and continues to be at the cutting edge of new developments in equipment and software. He has an uncanny ability to predict what new products will change the industry and which ones will be looked back on as passing fads. His strong suit, however, is processing the lessons of the past to develop well-reasoned thoughts and observations about the direction our profession and organization is heading. He is quick to help other surveyors who ask for advice, and his counsel is, for the most part, some of the soundest and most practical advice a county surveyor this side of the Snake River can get. He has always been active with OASIS and has put in countless hours for countless years working for the good of the organization. In recognition of his leadership and valuable contributions to the association, Mark Riggins of Marion County is awarded the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors Surveyor of the Year Award for 2014. And I would like to echo those comments and make sure we know that Mark is also extremely helpful to the department. He was very serious about his job, but with a great sense of humor as well. So, congratulations to Mark. Is there a picture that you wanted to take up?
Yes, we do. So we'll gather in front again. Get our exercises.
I did, so if Mark can hold that, there we go. I did, we want to make sure we see Commissioner Thompson, so, there we go. Yep, there we go, perfect. I'm gonna give you a couple, so, 1, 2, 3. Do one more. Ready, smile, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you, congratulations.
Thank you. Our next is a Juvenile Justice Professional of the Year. Faye Fagel.
I think she wants Chuck up there too.
And Chuck.
Good morning. I'm Faye Fagel. I'm the Juvenile Director. With me is Haley Rutter, who's the recipient of this award, and then Chuck Seibert, who's the Deputy Director of Juvenile. Every year, the Juvenile Directors Association holds a conference, and during the conference, we award Juvenile Professional of the Region awards. Just a little bit about those awards is that we're in the Northwest region. I'll try to name them all. It's Polk, Tillamook, Clatsop, Columbia, Yamhill, Lincoln, Marion, Tillamook.
Could Lynn be there?
Lynn, thank you. I knew I was missing one. Anyway, that region puts forward nominations, and then the nominations are done by their peers, and then the juvenile directors from those identified counties get together and review all of the nominations and select the winner. And so this year, the winner of our region is Haley Rutter. And many of you know Haley. We, as the juvenile department, run work programs, extensive work programs, and one of the kind of most visible work program that we have is our market. And Haley has been instrumentally involved in the market from its inception. I like to say that people know Haley more than they know Chuck or I. When people talk about the juvenile department, they don't necessarily know all the work they do. They talk about Haley and the good work she does. It's a very difficult job. The responsibility of the job is to run a business, but we're not running a business. Commissioner, you know what it's like to run a business, and when you're running a business with very unskilled workforce, because these are the youth that are in our care and custody that we're trying to help earn restitution and earn some work skills through this program. So it's not like hiring somebody to do a regular job where they're coming in with lots of skills that you want to pay them to do. These are youth coming in with very little skills, plus a number of other issues that are going on in their lives on any given day that they're trying to process and work through. And so Haley's job is not only to run the market, but also to be providing good customer service to the public that comes to buy and purchase the services from us. But then she's also very instrumental in working with these youth to help them work through their issues, learn work skills. We're very proud of the program in that in our work programs, last year we paid out over $80,000 in restitution. Commissioners, you know that's a strong value for the juvenile department to make sure that people that are harmed are compensated quickly with the financial payments that they earn and or that they deserve, and that the kids earn and pay them back. And Haley is certainly, an exemplary example of an employee of our department, and we get nothing but great comments from the public regarding the market, and always specifically around Haley and the work that she does. And she's hiding her award here, but let's put it out here so people can take a good look at this nice thing. So Chuck, did you want to add anything?
If the name of the market wasn't Fresh Start, it'd be Haley's Market. She is the cornerstone, and not only an ambassador for the juvenile department, for the county as well. When people call and say, well, now where are you located? Well, do you know where State Hospital is? There's a little market. Oh yeah, we know where the market is. So you know where the market is, and then it's Haley. She does an amazing job.
Wonderful.
It's something that you have to have special talents to do to be able to balance customers, youth in the process of growing teenagers, hormones, decision making, all of that, and make it a successful business. We have return customers that come and ask, where's Haley? Well, she does get a vacation.
What?
That is part of their life and that connection. So she's an amazing employee, amazing person, and has this ability to connect with kids, work with staff, and programs that send those kids there. So she's more than deserving of this honor, and I'm so happy that we're able to be here and recognize her. It's fantastic.
Let's give her a I think Haley's been winning awards for, I know I was at Juvenile for awards she got a few years back, so she's consistently done well and been recognized. Wonderful. Now, Jolene, your job is to not make me look short when I stand up by her.
When you stand next to Haley? Yeah, come on, John.
Oh, you really want a short person?
No, we want to make a stand.
So while everyone is gathering, I did want to say we actually learned about this award through a customer of the market. So someone was so impressed with Haley's work that she emailed our office to let us know that she had received this award. So that's wonderful. All right, everybody, ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do one more. Everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
Did you? It wouldn't work?
We can talk, yeah. It's hard. It's so hard to do what she's doing already and then do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
You have to have
All right, we have one more, and it's a pretty big one. Oregon County Council Association Annual Lawrence R. Kessel Memorial Award. And John Latimer, we're looking to you because it isn't right to make Gloria talk about herself, although
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I didn't have the opportunity to know Larry Kessel, but I think Gloria did. This, in the counties, we all have professions and professionals that work together to assure that all of our counties are operated well. And county councils also have an organization and an association where they meet and talk about the business that they have. This honor was voted on, I think, at your recent annual meeting, and it's presented annually to a county council or assistant county council who exemplifies the thoughtful, courageous, humorous, and oftentimes irreverent approach to the practice of county law, mastered by Larry Kessel. I didn't know Larry, but I know Gloria, and I think we're really lucky to have not only someone with probably the finest government legal mind that I've known since I've been in this business for a long time, but also someone who can let us know in English language what some of the law means. So we're really proud of Gloria, and I am too, and I hope we'll have more awards for Gloria as we move along. She has the plaque there beside her, and her name will be on that, along with other county councils. I mean, there's some famous names on there, by the way. You ought to look at those people we all know, and Gloria will be part of that group. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you. If I may,
Please.
this is a rotating plaque, so I don't get to keep it. My name is on there, but you did at one point, Commissioner, say that this is also for Marion County, and that's true. Marion County's name is on this plaque as well. And it's because we have a very involved and active set of elected officials and department heads, and we just help assist them in doing their work. This award was last in Marion County in 2004 when Joe Stonecipher won it, and so I'm very proud to bring the Cressel back to Marion County.
if this is a Marion County award, maybe you got it for a year, maybe we kind of embellish it, little stars and the Marion County names. Could you do that? And let's take a picture. Oh, I guess we're going down.
All right. Everybody ready? Smile. 1, 2. I'm gonna do one more. 1, 2.
We'll take a picture of it and put it in a frame.
Well, like I was trying to say, a lot of good people and a lot of good work done in conjunction with Marion County. We'll have a little bit more to talk about as we go. The next item is public comment. No one has signed up for that this morning, so we'll move right to the consent calendar. Maybe the shortest I've ever seen, Commissioner Cameron. So
Mr. Chair, it's certainly the shortest in my long history of
So we'd
6
like
months.
it to be executed perfectly, is what we're looking for this morning.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the consent calendar under legal counsel to approve abandoning unused drainage easements by issuing quitclaim deeds to the owners of 4773, 4774, and 4784 Brandon Court Northeast.
I'll second the
All right,
motion.
it's moved and seconded to approve our consent item this morning. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, thank you. We have two might be three as I look, two action items this morning. The first is under Board of Commissioners, we consider approval of an intergovernmental agreement among Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties establishing the Mid-Willamette Jobs Council. Gloria, your name's on this, if you'd go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Before you today is an intergovernmental agreement that updates the regional Jobs Council, the Mid-Willamette Valley Jobs Council. Initially, this was part of the Job Training Partnership Act in 1998 that was replaced by the Workforce Investment Act. And then in 2014, that act has been superseded by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And this is all about bringing workforce investment dollars that then funnels down to the region and is implemented through what used to be job growers, and that has now since been changed to Insight. This particular intergovernmental agreement creates the consortium of elected officials. That's the oversight body, and also appoints the Workforce Investment Board. Additionally, this year, it's adding Lynn County to the region. So the region would now be a four-county region of Yamhill, Polk, Marion, and Lynn counties. And those other counties have also considered and approved this intergovernmental agreement. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Gloria, thank you for being the counsel for the four counties to actually draft this and put it together and being there from the initial discussion. So really appreciate your work on it.
Thank you.
Yes, and if I can just add, this is just the beginning of the process of pulling Lynn County into our three-county region that has been traditionally together, at least ever since I've started as a commissioner. And I think we have a lot in common with Lynn County. I'm looking forward to that relationship, but it means that we're going to restructure our board. It means that we've had representatives of Marion, Polk, and Yamhill, and now we're going to bring in Lynn County representatives, but perhaps on a smaller board than what we have now. Will mean a little bit of a different role for the county commissioners. We've been voting members of the nonprofit board, which also served as the workforce board, and now it's going to be restructured a bit. But I also very much appreciate Gloria's help with this, because when it came to us, there were a few things that we were not exactly excited about, and I think Commissioner Brentano was able to pull in an alternate commissioner in this so that all three commissioners have a role, which I think is really important. So I will go ahead then and move approval of this intergovernmental agreement among Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's moved and seconded that we approve the intergovernmental agreement establishing Mid-Willamette Jobs Council. Any further discussion? I don't hear any, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Again, thanks for all who worked on that, and more work to come. Our second item is what I think the people left here are interested in. Consider approval of a resolution accepting an updated North Santiam Economic Opportunity Study and pursuing a 1996 federal promise made to the communities in the Santiam Canyon. So Barb Young, Renato Wakely, your names here. Would you lead this and get a bit of a picture of what I've come up with? We commissioned the Council of Governments through Renata to put this study together, and this is the presentation of it.
So we're hoping that we can figure this out here. Real quick, here we go. Slideshow. There we go.
And if you would, pull the microphones right up close and tell us what's going on.
Commissioners, for the record, my name is Barb Young, Government Relations Manager for Marion County, and I'll have my two guests introduce themselves as well.
Renata Wakely, Mid-Willamette Council of Governments.
Tim Kirsch, currently Mayor of Mill City.
And I'd also like to point out 4 guests that I know of that are in the audience today. At the end of the presentation, if you have any questions or comments for them, you can ask them as well. But we have Allison McKenzie from GROW Economic Development Corp. We have Grady McMahon, who is our district ranger from Willamette National Forest. We have Dave Kenny, who is our community development consultant on behalf of Mill City. And we have Sean Morford from Rural Development Initiatives. So thank you for coming. Today, as we get started, I'll have Mayor Tim Kirsch talk a little bit about his historical perspective of participating in the whole Opal Creek Wilderness Act as it started in 1996. And then we'll have Renata follow up with the study itself and next steps. And then I'm just going to give you a brief background of how we got here today. Let's see. It was about 2 summers ago, the commissioners organized a lunch up the canyon and invited all the mayors, the city councilors, local businessmen, concerned, interested citizens, just for a roundtable discussion to see what the issues were in the canyon. And while they were up there, this concept of, well, there used to be this promise of $15 million coming to the region, but nobody really knew the particulars about that. So the commissioners came back to the county, talked to myself and a couple other staff, and we worked with our federal lobbyist, CFM Strategic Communications, and we started researching this to try to figure out what was this, what happened, what were the promises made, and what was going on. So that's how we got started on this project. So what we found was in 1996, there was the Omnibus Park and Public Lands Management Act, which designated 37,500 acres of timberland in the upper North Santiam Canyon region as the Opal Creek Wilderness and Scenic Recreation Area. As part of an overall agreement to transfer these lands from the federal government, the legislation authorized $15 million to support economic development activities in this economically depressed area. The lands were designated, they were taken off the tax rolls, but over 15 years later, the promise of federal funding still has never come. The following trends, which Renata will follow up on in detail from the study, of the North Santiam has experienced significant economic distress during the 1980s and the 1990s. So as timber harvest from public lands declined, consequently manufacturing and natural resource-based jobs declined. The upper Santiam Canyon economy is still driven by manufacturing and natural resource-based industries, specifically wood products. The 1996 Omnibus Park and Public Lands Bill designated the state of Oregon with the responsibility to develop this economic opportunity plan, which would also determine the best use of the $15 million. The funding couldn't be appropriated or budgeted by the U.S. Agriculture Secretary until this plan was completed. The plan was completed, and it was submitted to the Department of Agriculture in the year 2000. Governor Kitzhaber at that time, along with other local, state, and federal leaders, all advocated for that funding, but again, I think there were the hard economic times even back in the country at that time, so the funding, again, never came. So Marion County and the communities of the upper North Santiam Canyon have taken steps to update the plan that's before you today, which will be submitted to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and all of our delegation, federal delegation. And again, the objective is to work to secure this $15 million or some portion thereof, or maybe over time, pieces of it. And then it'll be dual purpose, and we'll also use it for applying for state and federal grants. So I'd also like to emphasize all the local support for this effort. The commissioners from Marion County, Lynn County, as well as our cities, Gates, Mill City, Lyons, Detroit, and Idana are all very supportive of this effort as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Tim Kirsch to talk about his historical perspective.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners, I want to thank you for picking up the torch and carrying it on this this legislation that was passed 20 years ago. I appreciate everything that you guys can do to move it forward, because it was a promise made to the communities of the North Santiam Canyon that we felt pretty slighted on. At that time, when this legislation passed, I was that time the chairman of the board for the North Santiam Canyon Economic Development Corporation. And a lot of work was put into it by our group, as well as others, including RDI and SEDCOR. We spent a number of hours passing and completing all of the requirements that were put forward for us from Senator Mark Hatfield's office at the time, working in conjunction with the Forest Service, local economic advocates, environmental advocates, community advocates. We presented the Opal Creek Scenic Recreation Area Plan. That was kind of a new designation at that time, something that was a combination of wilderness area, some high-use area, some dispersed camping areas, and made it a recreational icon in the North Santiam Canyon, the Opal Creek area. But it did take those thousands of acres out of economic interest for our area. At first it was the logging, it took away the logging. There was in the early 90s a mine that was going to go in and was going to employ about 120 local citizens, but due to the Tri-Rivers ruling, that was shot down. So with that is where some of this came from. The $15 million was going to be designated for economic development type of projects throughout the North Santiam Canyon to help spur other growth in other areas. And with that, like I say, we had the Opal Creek Advisory Board. I served as an alternate on that board as well, passing that. There was the economic opportunity study done at that time with the help of SEDCOR and RDI on that. We developed a little local investment board, ways that we were going to divvy up the money that was promised to us, ways that we would be able to develop economic projects throughout the communities. It was shortly after the number of years that we put in working with the Forest Service, developing the Opal Creek legislation, that 911 occurred. And that was when money dried up everywhere, federal money. So the money, although it had been approved by legislation, had not yet been appropriated. They were waiting for these steps that we were doing to be fulfilled. Well, after the 911 drying up of all the money, it was hard to get anybody on board and I'm talking our local senators at the time, to really want to put forth the effort to try and get the money that we were promised. Everything was being redirected, and it was hard to get their ear. With that, I personally tried a number of times, speaking with our Senator Gordon Smith at the time, Senator Wyden at the time, even a trip I took back to Washington, D.C. at that time to bend their ear a little bit on it. Although they were sympathetic, they didn't see it as the best interest of theirs at the time to pursue it. So with that, the promise seemed to almost die, and we lost heart. And with there, we've picked ourselves up by the bootstraps and tried to continue on. But now, recently, with the resurgence here that Marion County has pretty much led the way on, I think we have a little bit of hope again in seeing this become a reality. So with that, I want to thank you once again for taking a look at this and seeing what it is that Marion County might be able to do. And I see a lot of good potential economic projects throughout the North Santiam Canyon that this money could be used for. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, thank you for all your involvement, and we hope we're so lucky. Commissioner Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mayor, for coming down and taking some time away to talk to us. Did you say you had interactions with Senator Hatfield's office about this? Or was that just
we did have some interactions with his office. He's actually the one that proposed this legislation and this package. And after, even after Senator Hatfield retired from office, we still had some, he still had some political clout, and we kept in contact with him. But at that time, like I say, with the whole 9/11 situation going on, everything was redirected and pretty much tied up. The scenic recreation area, which was the target of the whole project, was completed. So with that, you know, all the other stuff kind of went to the wayside. So they got their end of it, and we got the short end.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thanks, Tim.
All right.
So, good morning. With that, I will review some of the highlights of the updated study findings, review the results of the June 25th workshop that was held, and open the discussion for next steps and some opportunities. As Barb mentioned, and we just had a recap on, the original study was completed in 2000. It was a response to the Opal Creek Wilderness Act. And the current update is funded by Marion County and the Council of Governments, and will be used to pursue the promised federal funds, but also as a resource for pursuing private and public foundation sources for the local communities. The study area you see here, 670 square miles above River Mile 37 along Highway 22, and includes incorporated and unincorporated communities in the area. Start off with some trends that were updated as part of the study. The chart you have is a comparison of population from 2000 and 2010. This is census numbers for the 5 communities. Darker blue is on the left is 2000 data, and the second bar in the lighter blue is 2010 census data. You'll see Detroit, Gates, and Idanha have shown slight population declines or no growth, where Lyons and Mill City are showing slight increases. Continuing on with demographic trends, we have 3 indicators included, and some, along with some others in the report. Common indicators include per capita income, unemployment, and poverty levels. The table compares the 5 canyon cities with state and U.S. averages. All 5 communities have a lower per capita incomes compared to state and U.S. averages, in some cases quite a bit lower than what we see in Oregon or for the United States. Unemployment for the active labor force varies among the communities. 3 of the 5 cities have higher unemployment rates than the national average. It's difficult using census data. You'll see unemployment 0% for Detroit. And for those that are in the audience and among the commission and staff, we know that that's not correct. Using American Community Census data is difficult in that these are statistical samples. And so if we have one person for a community of approximately population of 280 to 300 responding, and they're employed, that in the American Community Survey will show a 0% census. So we're working with the Oregon Employment Department and regional economists to get these numbers. If you recall from 2000 census data, unemployment was a number that was asked, but when we move forward to the 2010 census, that was no longer a number that was asked of all residents of the United States. And so, again, we're using statistical sampling. It's a little more difficult. So we are working with the regional economists to look at these numbers, and we'll include that in the report, but at the time of this presentation, we didn't have that yet. Poverty levels, 2 of the communities, Mill City and Gates, have quite a bit of higher persons living below the poverty level than the national average. Again, this is using American Community Survey data, U.S. Census data, which was used in the 2000 report. And so we will look to add additional numbers from our Oregon Employment Department, which we've worked with on the next slide. You'll see some of that, and we'll get more data from them. So continuing on with other demographic trends, what you see here, education and age, show some striking figures. All cities have a much higher median age except for Mill City, but in some cases, if you're looking at the median age for Oregon of 38, we range in the 47 to 51, which shows some trends in aging population as you move up the canyon, also having to do with the school districts being moved closer to, moving westward. We have higher high school and college dropout rates that are shown, but we have good numbers when it shows college, although no degree achieved, and higher numbers in associate level degrees as compared to the state. Employment and payroll is shown here. Working with the Oregon Employment Department, we were able to get some numbers, specific data on employment levels in the region. Some of this information is also included in the report. The results are similar to the county in that we're seeing a slow recovery. A bright spot here is that the canyon showed a higher total annual payroll increase as compared to the county and the state. This appears to be a factor that the next slide will show the percentage of manufacturing that takes up total employment in the area. Manufacturing has shown a greater recovery than other industries and tends to have a higher rate of pay, which is a positive sign for the area. And as we see in the next slide here, manufacturing takes up 41% of employment in the area. And again, this is from the Oregon Employment Department for looking at the region in particular. We see a large dependence on manufacturing of forest products is the prominent manufacturing that we're seeing here as compared to other industries. For example, if you look at manufacturing in the canyon as 41% statewide, that is 10% for the state of Oregon and 9.8% for Marion County. So a significant part of the industries in the canyon are manufacturing. Government is 17% for the canyon as compared to statewide, which is 16%. So that's in line. Leisure and hospitality, 14% for the area as compared to 10% statewide. Another part, not only did the study update the 2000 data as far as demographics and employment trends, a large part of the study was updating the commercial and industrial land analysis. This is used to show availability of employment lands, commercial and industrial, for the area as this influences economic development potential. And so using county assessor data, aerial photos, and GIS data from the Council of Governments, we did a look at each of the communities and their available commercial and industrial lands. Here you have commercial lands. Over 98 acres of commercially zoned lands are available for development. Some cities have fairly small inventories, looking at Lyons, Gates, and Detroit. We also know that commercial lands, and as the next slide will show with industrial lands, there are infrastructure limitations as far as the ability to use current commercial and industrial employment lands as far as creation of new lands. So here are your industrial lands. Close to 400 acres available. A large portion of this land is in Lyons and in Linn County. Mill City also has a large amount of industrial acreage in Linn County. However, many of these sites have issues with brownfield contamination. In the study, we overlaid Department of Environmental Quality data, which shows just how many sites are shown as having potential contamination overlaid with the industrial lands. And not only do we have the brownfield potential constraints that were brought up at the workshop and are shown in the Department of Environmental Quality data, but we also know that there are some infrastructure constraints as far as capacity issues with industrial land, so all commercial and industrial lands. I'll summarize the June 25th workshop briefly. It was held at the Gates Rural Fire District with support from GROW EDC. Over 24 attendees were at the workshop, and at that point the study findings were in a draft format and were presented to the attendees, and a discussion of opportunities and barriers to economic growth and vitality were included. This is also, it's known as a SWOT analysis, discussing strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so weaknesses and threats discussed at that workshop included a lack of business diversity, lack of services and facilities to support tourism activities, depreciated abandoned properties, brownfield sites again brought up, and decrease or outmigration of the population, as you saw in one of the earlier slides for census data. Strengths and opportunities included the abundance of recreational activities, high traffic volumes through and to the area, available land, both commercial and industrial employment lands, strong cultural and historic resources, harvesting forests available for harvesting, and the growing spirit of working together as a region to create a force moving forward as opposed to competing. Top priorities from the workshop are included in the study and outlined here. The need to leverage and support the regional assets, continued investment in public infrastructure, and brownfield remediation to assist in redevelopment of the existing industrial and commercial lands. Also included as part of the study, we reached out to each of the communities for an update on infrastructure needs and opportunities, as well as community needs. And so that's included in the report. We had an outline of summarizing, water, sewer, road, community facility needs, and so all of those numbers were updated and are included in the report. So we are near conclusion of what's considered the first step in moving this project forward, which is updating the 2000 document. As I stated, we updated the list of regional investment needs, reached out to each community, and each community had an opportunity to, either through their elected officials or public works staff, to do so. The draft plan was out for review and comment and distributed to over 30 parties. Final copies have been submitted. Now we continue, as I mentioned, when data comes in from the Oregon Employment Department, we will insert that data. The documents available for review on the COG website. Barb has a resolution, I believe, included in the packets for acknowledgement from the county commissioners. And so part of the next step in our discussion today is kind of what is next and what will happen. Working with the county and GROW EDC, we have some tentatively scheduled events coming up. My understanding is that the county is looking to lead an economic distress community opportunities summit, tentatively scheduled for April 2015, and Barb can speak more on that. GROW EDC has been in contact and continues to work with rural development initiatives. They're also looking at a spring 2015 economic vitality summit. So we're looking at GROW EDC will be working with area businesses on what the opportunities, constraints, and how they can move forward. That first bullet, the county continues to work with cities and other elected officials and representatives to see, what can be happening there. One of the recommendations from the report continues to be, as the mayor mentioned, the establishment or reestablishment of a regional investment board made up of members from those incorporated and unincorporated areas to take the document, create a mission statement, and continue to work together as a region moving forward, as opposed to competing for the same fund sources. COG will continue to work with the area as a member services organizations. I have 3 projects ongoing right now in Gates, Detroit, and Idana that we continue to provide services to those communities as they request us to do so. Opening up the presentation for discussion, the county has recently been successful in getting a resource assistance for rural environments participant. I've been in contact with Dan on a regular basis. He has, as directed by the county and staff, has placed the region, the canyon, as a priority. And I know that he's made himself available to meet with cities, looking to identify potential fund sources for them, and offer to help write grant applications. There's been some discussion of work session among the jurisdictions, the council of governments, and the county. Some potential other resources for the area, or the Oregon Solutions, Ford Family Foundation. We have a representative from Rural Development Initiatives here who works with the Ford family on what's called the Ford Leadership Training Institute, and they can touch on that. I know that Mill City and Gates previously has gone through this. So there's a question of, are there private foundation sources to kind of help and assist financially in training some of these community members in moving forward and working together in partnership. This slide here comes from CFM Strategic, Joel Rubin, if you're familiar with that name. And this is titled Promises Made, Promises Not Kept Yet. 3-pronged strategy, and was a discussion that he and I and Barb had yesterday. He sees this as a 3-pronged approach moving forward. On the left, you have the short-term approach, which is ongoing and really where COG can offer assistance in that, pursuing those funding options and working on applications and identifying what are the priorities for the region. So continuing to work to start to chip away with those needs. The center is the center's circle is looking at that promised $15 million that we've heard reference to, and that's CFM's strategic endeavor that they will pursue. And on the right is what was presented as another option in pursuing those funds, in getting the funding into the president's budget. Rather than looking for earmarks. So my understanding is that the Board of Commissioners will be going to DC in February 2015. This was brought up by Joel Rubin again as an opportunity to look at these opportunities, identify, look, we've updated the 2000 report, here's the data, and to bring up the concerns of those funds that haven't been allocated. And as I mentioned, the COG will continue to work on that left bubble of pursuing funding sources that we know are currently available, and trying to take some of those priorities and needs and see if we can chip away and work with the communities on that. So that is the update on the economic opportunity analysis, and I can try to answer questions on that.
I've been told there are some questions, Commissioner Carlson.
Okay. Thank you. I've got quite a few questions, so
Okay.
if I can kind of walk through. Some of them are technical and some of them are more sort of philosophical, I guess. So the first one on page 10, this was a technical question. There's 2 asterisks next to 5770, under North Santiam, the total population figure on the far right, and I could not find a key to tell me what those 2 asterisks represented. Can you tell me why they're?
Yes, and that will be a correction. This data was from 1980. It came from the 2000 report, and it was a population estimate for the entire region, including unincorporated areas. So again, the notation will be corrected in the final document, but that summary comes from the 2000 report. We didn't find a source for the 5770, so the idea was to put the citation that this was from the 2000 report, and note that.
All right. Thank you. And then, I think overall, let me just preface it by saying that I think the report is well done, technically well done. There's a lot of data in it. I mean, I can't argue with any of the data that you have in here. I think it's great. It's very thorough. The pieces that I'm concerned about, and maybe my concerns are misplaced, so we can kind of have this discussion, is in developing compelling reasons as to why the federal government now should come through with the $15 million. So let me just kind of walk you through a few things that I noticed, and I took this home and read it night before last, and so I apologize I'm doing this, but I figured this was our opportunity to have this discussion. So if you look at that same population table, and you look between 1990 and 2000, so Detroit went from 331 people to 262, Gates dropped from 499 to 471, Idana from 289 to 232, Mill City from 1555 to 1537, but Lyons increased in population. So why is that? Or why do we think that is? Tim?
Go ahead, Tim.
About every 5 years, people are willing to commute an extra 5 minutes. So Lyons, at that time, went through a number of housing projects where they built a number of new houses in the city of Lyons. Most of those commute here into Salem to work.
All right. Did the decline in the timber industry for the spotted owl, did that result in a decline in Detroit, Gates, Idana, Mill City?
It resulted in a big decline in working class families. However, then it also made a glut of low rent housing. So therefore, that's where our numbers went up with our unemployed and our poverty level, because it also, with the glut in housing, it also lowered rents, and so it brought in a number of I want to say Section 8 housing and low rent housing.
All right. Well, and I recognize this is an economic opportunity study. It's not a children and family study, but I had the opportunity to work as a consultant back in the late 1990s and early 2000s on children and families, did the comprehensive planning on that, and we went out and interviewed people in the canyon. We had community progress teams out there, talked with people, and one of the things that I heard over and over is that when this decline, when the spotted owl came in the 80s, and all of a sudden everything stopped, and then mills started to shut down. And I know this a bit from a personal anecdote. My sister's father-in-law, his family lived in the Idana Mill City area for years. Casey Jones, I don't know if you knew Casey, but anyway, he worked at the mill, his sons worked at the mill. They would get up, walk across the street, go to work, come home. They were well-paying jobs. People didn't have to have even a high school education probably to work in the mill and get a fairly decent wage that would support a family. Now all of a sudden the mills are drying up, those jobs are going away. Now in Lyons, I'm wondering too if Ferris Lumber and the fact that they continued, and I was scanning here as you were talking, Renata, and looking on my phone and saw that they had actually added a veneer plant and did some things where they increased in the Lyons area over the time, probably made a difference in terms of people shifting that direction. But what you had also from a socioeconomic viewpoint is that you had increases in family stress. So you had substance abuse issues and domestic violence issues and child abuse issues, and people saying that they went into the canyon because they wanted to be isolated and they didn't want people bothering them. And, so we had a lot of those dynamics going on as well in there that created a very not only depressed economic situation, but a depressed community, and that lack of kind of hope and the idea that the community had the ability to move forward. And so I think that's, number one, that's a concern about the fact that it's just sort of numbers on a page, but it doesn't give me a compelling story about what the dynamics were that led to this situation in 2000, where now you've got the spotted owl and whatever else you've got there, and timber is shut down, and the largest portion of the economy is timber, and you can't do that anymore. And then you overlay, now we're going to put all of this land in a scenic recreation area, right? And so we can't touch it, and we have no infrastructure to do anything else And so then you get into where we are right now, where, and I'm looking at Allison, and I know she does an awesome job in working with people to get jobs, but, or to try to figure out businesses. But when I look at page 14, I think it is. Oh, no, it's page 41. Let's go there first, then I'll go back to page 14. And it says, under the second bullet, under economic objectives, seek to diversify the regional economy by supporting small business development in such industries as tourism. And we've heard this all around the state when they talk about what can you do? Well, you have this beautiful area, you can have tourism. So the jobs from tourism are not high-paying jobs. They are part-time jobs in hotels and restaurants. They are minimum wage jobs. Most of them don't have benefits. And so you're switching from an economy where people have a solid income and can support their families to an economy where people have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and the 2 and 3 jobs may not actually exist in the canyon. You may have to commute into Salem to do that. The other comment on that same page, 41, second bullet from the top, a regional economy still largely dependent on the forest products industry. And then there was a comment, and I'll go back to page 14, where it says this extreme dependence on one narrow economic sector for most employment is not a healthy trait. And then it goes on. Those are basically the editorial comments that I found. Otherwise, it's just very clinical, very academic, kind of here's what all the data is, and and then here's what the people said in the focus groups and so on. And I'm thinking to myself, so if we were writing this report about St. Paul, would we say, well, they're largely dependent on agriculture, and therefore it would be really bad for, that they need to diversify because they're just too dependent on agriculture? No, we say we have the most agricultural sales. We tout this all the time about how wonderful it is that we have, but we're number 1 in agricultural sales. We encourage to have more industry around agriculture. The reason that we don't treat timber in the same way and start saying it is because we want to be politically correct and not admit that the whole reason is we had an agricultural economy out in the canyon. It was timber, all right? But because of the constraints that the federal government put on us, we are in the situation that we are now. And perhaps because we're doing this study because we want money out of the federal government, and we're doing this study because we're going to give it to a federal agency, we don't want to tell them what the obvious thing is, but it's nowhere in this report. And in fact, that comment on page 14 actually I found really troubling, about that it's not a healthy trait to have a not undiversified. I mean, that may be true from an economic perspective that you want to diversify, but if you're an area where you have 200 people in a town or whatever, and your whole economy was based on forest products, and you ended up stopping that through no market forces. I mean, granted, yes, mills are going to become more efficient and so on and so forth, but they won't dry up unless you have a federal mandate that happened as it did through the whole history that we know of that happened from the 84 or whatever on. So I don't know what we do about that, but if we're inserting language about employment numbers and so on, I would hope that perhaps we could go back and there could be a little bit more under the, there's a section here that says historic economic conditions. And it doesn't tell that compelling story in a way that, at least if I were sitting in Washington, D.C., I would understand it. And maybe there's a way you can write it that is as more politically correct than the way that I said it, but I think it has to be more direct than what it is, and not sound like for some reason the Santiam Canyon, through a fault of theirs, just didn't diversify enough, and therefore when we took the scenic lands, oh boo-hoo, it was their fault because they didn't have enough industry, manufacturing and, and all the things that you'd have in a very urban area, when really the crisis happened from both an economic level and from a family and survival level because of actions that were taken by the federal government. And that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. So.
I'll butt in just a little bit. I like a lot of that. I just don't, I almost, looking at the introduction would be a place right at the beginning to lay out the case of what brought us to here and why this is important. And maybe we can work on that as an addendum or something, still approving the plan and happy with the overall.
Right,
But
and then
would like
if I
to
could
see-
just add too, I think that the other piece is if there was a summary of exactly then what is it that then these dollars would do, you know, as a conclusion or whatever, as a last paragraph that says, you know, therefore, after, 60, 80 pages, whatever, of data, here are the things we need. We need a sewer system in Detroit. We need, it's threaded throughout that they don't have this, and there's this study, and there's that study. And I know these things because I have been up there and talked with you all and worked with you over the years, but it doesn't pop out at me in this report. I can't see. So the compelling reason about what will $15 million do that will take us from the trajectory of this because of what the federal government did to a trajectory of maybe this, all right? Because you've got to lay some foundational pieces in order for this diversified business to occur. And much of it, I think, and Tim, I wasn't in those meetings that you talked about where you kind of figured out how you'd split up the money, but my guess is a lot of it's infrastructure for the cities to be able to then entice people to come because you've got the water systems and the sewer systems and the streets and the chambers of commerce and all of those pieces together, so that then people who want to do a business can just come in kind of shovel ready and put their business in and have some expectation of success. So
I totally agree, and actually I think we appreciate your critiques on this because we want to present the best package possible when we do present this to the federal government. So, we see things in a certain light, and the critiques from an outside source obviously will help us a lot. Infrastructure projects are going to be important. I think the majority of the population has already figured out that we're not going to bring in a bunch of big manufacturing jobs up there. We would like to see a lot of small industry come in. We can do some small 5 or 6 man operations that have things, but it does take the infrastructure, the buildings, the areas to do this in. So in Mill City, inside of Mill City, I mean, the industrial land that we have is small, but in our urban growth boundary, we still have a lot of area. The mills that have survived up in the canyon area are small family-owned operations. All the big operations, corporate operations, are gone. They were dependent on the federal timber, the state timber. The ones that we have now have a lot of their own resources, so they're able to sustain themselves with their own lands, as well as picking up some timber sales and stuff. So that's why when they took all the acreage out of play, the big corporation mills left. So we lost with that a lot of the logging jobs and stuff like that. I want to say it was back in the early 2000s, the employment department did a survey on the North San Canyon area, and the money generated, the wages generated in our area was still 65% dependent on timber. Other timber giants, Molalla, Scio, all those, they were all down around 10%, 6%, because they had other opportunities, other industries that were available to them. So while we were still, and still are, very much dependent on timber, they were not. So they diversified. They weren't hit quite as hard by the whole economy turn down. So, we're very thankful for the mills that we have, because they are generous supporters of the whole community, the whole canyon area. We do look for some diversification and potential to bring in some other small industries. Personally, I do not see tourism as the answer, just one of the components of the answer. We are on the third busiest highway in the state, so we see lots of traffic going through. Everybody says if we can figure out a way to stop every third car and have them buy a donut or something, we could build the economy on selling donuts then. I mean, but, so we just got to figure out a way to utilize what we have, and infrastructure and diversification is just one of the big components.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks. Giovanni's and Rosie's need bigger parking lots.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll talk to the ODOT about that one.
I appreciate the report and the work that's going into it, and I really wrote down the commissioners, in my mind, what the commissioner was saying, that the obvious point has been left out of the report, and the reasons why we're even here today from 30 years ago or 25 years ago. I don't think it's been left out of the report, but I would say I would agree with her that it needs to probably, I don't care about being politically correct. I think we need to state the fact that the reason why is because we've had an industry that has been taken away from us, out of our control. And as I spend a lot of time up in the canyon, one of the things I'm listening to and thinking, everybody has these creative ideas about the tourism. In fact, I was visiting a gentleman who purchased one of the properties up in Idana and put in an ice factory up there, an ice making processing, where he delivers ice in the summertime mainly to all these places. And then he was talking about a vision he had for maybe even making this an amphitheater and an RV park. But it was everything he was talking about. I thought, as I left there that day, it's summertime, and it is seasonal. It's not something that's going to sustain people through the year. Every bit helps, and I think that was your point, Commissioner, that if you're a server in a restaurant, you're making a lot more than minimum wage, and I think people forget about that the tips that those people make, they can live on those. So there are those opportunities in the service industry, but we've got to have a reason to pull people off the road to stop there, and the infrastructure has to come first to be able to even have those facilities that would allow creative people. Listen to people that are up at Brighton Bush that are artists that think about, wow, if we had a way to feature our art when we're up here in the Detroit area, that would be, kind of a mini Sisters. There's lots of creative people up there. It's just a matter of pulling it all together and getting some resources to help do it. So it'll be a challenge for us, and thank you for the work that you've done here.
So,
I'm sorry.
Well, if I could just, in response, I don't disagree with any of the input that's been provided, and it's very valuable. And the report has its constraints or limitations, and the task was to just update the numbers, and the outreach required to get the infrastructure needs and those budgets updated and do the buildable lands inventory and the census data. And so we've done that, but I do agree that we can work on the introduction and executive summary, and I'll work with your staff to do so. That's absolutely something that we want to get that point across, but want to also acknowledge that there were some limitations in what we could accomplish with the study, but we will continue to work on those comments and kind of maybe work on that executive summary that can be included. And thank you for the feedback.
One last point, Mr. Chair. This weekend I was up there, and the elementary school is now in piles of wood in Detroit. Change is happening. I don't know what direction that means.
Right. The consolidation of the schools, I think, toward Mill City is another shown in the median ages of the areas, is that you no longer have families up there, and that changes employment and travel.
Even in Mill City, although the population has increased, the school population has declined. So they're struggling with numbers in their schools. But one thing I wanted to add it on the tourism industry, and something I would have never thought of, and I'm kind of excited about it. Someone is actually putting in a business up along the highway. They're going to manufacture doggy treats, and they have a little doggy rest area there. Now you consider you got the third busiest highway in the state. People all the time, when you drive the highway, you see people up at Maples Rest area walking and exercising their pets. So if they can start a business where people stop because they travel through all the time with their pets. And pet industry, as anybody that watches retail, is huge. Billions and billions of dollars go towards your pets every year. And they have been manufacturing doggy treats for a long time, but now they're putting in this pet area and stuff like that, so they hope to draw people off of the highway. Now, obviously, that's not going to cure our unemployment problem, but it is, a mom and pops with the possibility of a couple of other potential secondary wage earners or high school kids looking to earn a little bit of money during the summer employment opportunities. So if we can get a half a dozen of those kind of things come in, that takes a bite out of the problem.
A bite?
What's that?
A dog bite out of the problem.
All right, now, unless anybody here has anything else, I had some people that said they're interested supporters. I'd like to give them an opportunity to say anything if they'd like to. So if you would, I hope these microphones are live here on the side. Allison, you're raising your hand. Would just come up, introduce yourself, and let us know what you'd like to. You don't have to do this, but I usually like to hear from Dave Kinney if it's possible. So.
It's green, so I assume it's on. I'm Allison McKenzie with GROW EDC, formerly known as the North Santiam Canyon Economic Development Corporation. And first I want to thank Tim, because of all the people in the canyon, he's the one who has kept the light burning on this topic. And didn't let it die when people got discouraged. There were little embers that needed to be blown on, but there was still a fire there. And I also think this study was beautifully done. All of the data that needed to be collected was collected very well. And the narrative, the part that makes people cry when they read it, so they want to give us money, that's what it sounds like we're going to be adding, that compelling piece of it to it. There were just a couple of things in the study that I wanted to address. One is with the low income and low wage jobs, we also have an issue with workforce development, that having a bunch of unemployed people does not mean you have a workforce. So there are also people who live in the area for the various reasons that Commissioner Carlson, you were referring to earlier, impact people's ability to find lucrative work or even start a business. I do want to say something positive about tourism, because it's taken a couple hits here, so I'm going to take the other side of it. There may be low-paying jobs in large tourism organizations, that might be true, but most of the business opportunity, at least right now, in that corridor, I would say the whole corridor, Almsville, State and Sublimity, all the way up to Marion Forks, are for mom and pop operations, are for owner-operated operations. So when you think of tourism or hospitality, think of people creating businesses and jobs for themselves first. I think that's where a lot of the opportunity will come from. And I wanted to say a little bit about the Economic Vitality Summit that we're doing. The date will either be, looks like April 30th or May 7th. Those are Thursdays. And this is a community-wide, region-wide conversation from that Almsville area all the way up to Marion Forks to discuss what we can do together to build greater prosperity in the area. So it will build on the program that the commissioner's bringing about federal funding for infrastructure and things like that. But this is a way not just for business people, but people in community services, people in nonprofits, unemployed people, students, retired folks, all to get together to help us brainstorm and create priorities for what comes next for us. It's very engaging. We anticipate between 80 and 120 people being there. It will be quite large. Finding the venue is the trickiest part, actually. Those are the main things that I wanted to say, and it's alluded to in the study, but I think it was alluded to too with you, Commissioner Carlson, is that we have all these things that have come down in this area, whether it was taking 12,000, 11,000 acres of timber out of production to create the Opal Creek Wilderness Area, or the spotted owl issue. But there are other regulations that really affect us significantly when we're looking at what do we do now. And I'm not here to discuss the philosophy behind them. It doesn't matter, they exist. We have a lot of forest land, and the Forest Service is easy to work with, but that creates some constraints on development. We have the 3-basin rule that affects us. And without wastewater treatment, there are businesses that we've had that have wanted to locate in our area, but there was no capacity for them with the amount of water that they needed to use or something they needed to produce. And I'll use, best example would be brew pubs. Mill City is the only city in this area that has a wastewater treatment system. We have ODOT. This is a major connecting route and has been for over 100 years between the Mid-Willamette Valley and Central Oregon. And, but it's our main street. It's to us, it's the main street that connects us all together. For ODOT, it's a major thoroughfare, and there are a lot of rules and regulations about what you can do and what you cannot do alongside these highways, and plans to widen areas for traffic, which is needed, but may also take away parking in Mill City, for example. So all of those constraints make it a little more challenging. So you have, here's what we have to work with, and here are all these constraints, and what do we have left to work with? And that's one reason that my hunch is that a tourism initiative will come out of this Economic Vitality Summit. I see a lot of interest in that. That would not ever be the only thing, but I think that's one logical next step. There's some other things I expect around youth engagement to help more young people stay involved in the community from a business standpoint, so they're wanting to stay and raise families there and grow businesses. I can't predict everything, but I really appreciate your comments and really commend you for taking this forward to the next step. And I've also been assuming that this document could be used for other things, especially if this regional investment board is created. This document could be used for other funding opportunities aside from the $15 million that was earmarked but not appropriated. So that I must thought that may have been why some of the commentary may have been left out of the report. I didn't know.
One comment. So I just want to clarify, because I didn't intend for tourism to take a hit, quote unquote, in my comments. My comments were intended to say that in this whole spotted owl conversation, people sitting back on the East Coast that prefer to keep Oregon a park rather than have us have economic development will say, well, you can just go to tourism, that it's a trade, that the jobs that you have in the timber industry can just be traded for tourism jobs. And while it is true that in some restaurants, tips are good, but not all restaurants, some people that work in restaurants don't get tips at all. And if it's a high volume restaurant and it's an economy restaurant, you will probably get some decent tips. But I worked as a waitress that was my first couple of jobs. And in the first drive-in restaurant that I worked in, I got no tips. And in the second one, I got minimum wage, and I couldn't have supported a family on my tips. But what I am saying is that those are economic opportunities, yes. Do they replace the higher paying wage jobs? I think everybody would acknowledge, no, they don't. No. And so we have to figure out how we make sure that families have the wages that they need, rather than trying to have to piece low-paying jobs together to just try to make ends meet. And hence, I mean, even you can see with the level of wage and the level of poverty and so on that it's not a great trade. So that was the point that I was trying to make.
It's an excellent point, and I think what people have really been missing. I came into the area after all of this had happened, and what I hear over and over again is how much people had family wage jobs when they could work in the forest. And some people left the community. A lot of people stayed, hoping those things would come back. And that's another part of why their unemployment numbers are fairly high. And I think when you look at the state numbers, as Renata indicated, you'll see that the unemployment figures and poverty levels are higher than what we were able to glean, what the study was able to glean so far for those kinds of reasons. And people are longing for those. So what do? Partly you need workforce development so people can find other things. You create opportunities for other jobs to be there, and if there are local businesses that can come in or expand, that will also help. And we're all working at this on the same thing. It's a multi-pronged approach. I think tourism comes up primarily because we have lots of beautiful spaces. We've seen a lot of growth in the tourism and hospitality. That was interesting to me that it's the third largest segment behind manufacturing and government in terms of employment. And we have lots of beautiful scenic areas, and we've got a lot of cars who drive by. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Meeting man, would you like to say anything? Just yes or no? Looks like yes. Come on up.
Thanks for asking. I want to thank the commissioners for hearing this important topic, because I really believe that it is very important. I also would like to really thank Barb and Renata for the work you guys have been doing on this, and Tim for being here today and giving us the history. I'm the district ranger of the Detroit Ranger District, so I'm one of those feds. My job is to implement what Congress tells me to implement, and so this came down before I got here, but I've been dealing with it since I arrived, and I think part of my role as district ranger is to work with local communities in any way I can to help expand. I kind of feel like the night watchman sometimes, whose the lights have been turned off and I'm trying to get them flipped back on now. And so I've been working with communities and with people to try to reinvigorate the area. And we used to talk about 1 billion board feet or bust on the Willamette. Now we're at 70 million board feet. So it's come down a long ways in how much timber we do cut. And I don't know that the forest could support 1 billion board feet forever, but it certainly could support more than 70 million. And so that's an important part of the whole picture too. Janet, I thank you for bringing that up as something that is important to remember. I also feel like we're really, I spend a lot of time working across the different towns, and have worked with Grow and with Allison, and I can feel like we're near a tipping point. There's a lot of things happening in the canyon that are exciting, a lot of things coming together, and I can see it kind of coming into focus. So I want to continue to push that. And I think things, just some funding into the communities, that 15 million would help a lot. Just simple things like sewer treatment plants for Detroit. That could be the tipping point that pushes things over and really continues things to develop. So I think it's really important that we really focus on this and ask for what was promised a while ago. I can't become political, although I'm getting a little political right now, I guess. So I'm kind of in the background, but I'm working away and trying to help out wherever I can. So I appreciate all your help in what you're doing. Just want to recognize that. So thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate it too. Now, Dave Kinney. Oh, wonderful.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dave Kinney. I'm the Community Development Consultant, and I've been working with the City of Mill City for probably the past 15 years or so, or something close to that. Just a couple of observations. One is that the work that the COG is doing in terms of putting the data together and offering the assistance to communities in the future is pretty important. Those smaller towns don't have the staff resources and the expertise to be able to put together applications for federal assistance, state assistance, or to be able to present that compelling case that Janet was talking about. And I think it's really important that there be assistance provided by both Marion County as well as by the Council of Governments, both this Council of Governments as well as Cascades West for the communities that are split between Marion and Lynn County. Second, Renata touched on it, was that in the data that's presented, she used the American Community Survey in 2012 data, and I think that really does understate the unemployment rates that occurred in many of those canyon communities in 2012. As I've been doing some work for the City of Mill City, the Oregon Employment Division updated some of that employment data for me, and instead of being the 8.8% of unemployment rate that's shown on the slide, Oregon Economic Development Employment Division identified it as being a 17.5% unemployment rate. That's a pretty dramatic difference. And then I think the third thing is being able to work with Grady and the other communities. It's really important that those communities, I think, using the COG and using the county as conveners and leaders, should be trying to prioritize what are the key projects that can be accomplished with the funding that may be available. And I think it's really important that they have a cohesive case that they want to present, tell that story, to be able to demonstrate to not only the federal officials but to state officials that the communities are working together, they believe in the same thing, and they have a vision for where the canyon can be in 10 years or 20 years. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. And Sean Morford?
Well, good morning. I didn't come here necessarily to do any speaking, but more to just listen and have a chance to meet face-to-face some folks that I've been corresponding with. But now that you've given me this chance, I'll just maybe state that RDI, as a nonprofit that's been around for 20 years here in the state, is very committed to this process, and I have a personal commitment to it. I have a long history in the canyon personally, and I spent the summer in the canyon working out of near Tim. So I am here to help link as I can this process with the philanthropic communities that we're involved with. Ford Family Foundation is a partner with RDI. There are action grants available, and so I have connections with those players down there, and I just want to restate my commitment to it. And of course, the EV Summit that Allison was referring to earlier is in partnership with RDI, so we'll all be involved with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just had one thought before we can let this go, move on. Obviously, many of these communities and some of these lands belong in Lynn County. Does it accentuate the study to ask for their concurrence in some way, or does anybody think that would be important? Allison says yes, nobody else.
Commissioner, we could do that. We did have their concurrence when we started the update to the plan, and we talked about the process we were going to go through leading up to today, and they had all actually voted on it and said, yes, we agree with that process. But I think now we get through this process, we'll get these updates done.
And they could attest to that somewhere at the end or something to give it a little more stature.
Right. We could give it to them as well to do. I'll work with John on that.
Wonderful. I'll be with a couple of them this week, and perhaps I can take it.
Be good.
All right, well, what would you like to do?
I think it would be good to actually approve the study today, and we can approve the resolution, and we can just do it with the recognition that there'll be some additional data. And I don't think it's going to take much verbiage. But, I just think it's going to be a couple paragraphs at the beginning and the end to kind of get to the place where I was suggesting. So, and I'm happy to help with that too, Barb.
Perfect.
Some thoughts
Great.
that I have.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution accepting an updated North Santiam Economic Opportunity Study and pursuing the 1996 federal promise made to the communities in the Santiam Canyon with the need for some adjustments to the introduction and the summary.
Very good.
Second motion.
All right, it's moved and seconded, as just stated. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. Again, thanks for all your work on it and all the work to come.
Thank you.
We'll thank you ahead of time. That's the end of our items. There's no public hearing this morning, so the last to do is to read the places we'll be together in the coming week. This afternoon, Wednesday, the 10th of December, Economic Development Advisory Board in the Commissioners' Boardroom, 5th floor, 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem. Tomorrow morning, 7:30 to 9, Kaiser, Marion County meeting, Sherry's Restaurant, 4998 River Road North in Kaiser. 5 o'clock to 6 on the 11th Thursday, Salem Kaiser Transit Board of Directors celebrating Chariot's 35th anniversary in our Senator hearing room, this room, first floor, 555 Court Street Northeast in Salem. Monday the 15th, 8:30 to 9, Commissioner's Calendar Review, Silverton Conference Room, 555 Court Street, 5th floor. And that's followed in the same location at 9 o'clock to only 9:30, okay? Management Update, again, Silverton Conference Room at 9:30 on the 15th, Monday, work session, Board of Commissioners Communication Priorities. Again, Silverton Conference Room. Monday, 3:30 to 5, an interesting discussion, a work session, East Salem issues, Silverton Conference Room, 5th floor, 555 Court Street. And then Tuesday, the 16th, 10 to 11, a work session on Veteran Services, Silverton Conference Room. And then next Wednesday at 9 o'clock, our next scheduled board session here in the Senator Hearing Room, 1st floor, 555 Court Street, Northeast in Salem. Well, all right. Anything else anyone would like to add this morning? Get your calendars. I thought maybe Sean left. I was going to ask if that was the only reason she stayed, but I hope she got one. Anything else? I don't hear any, so we'll call this meeting adjourned.